Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special crossover edition from the Rivals Network between OU Insider and OrangeBloods.com. I am Jesse Crittenden, joined by Jason Suchomel, longtime editor, reporter, everything for Orange Bloods. Jason, man, it's been a chaotic forever, it seems like, but especially last couple of days. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, you said long time. I think that's just another way of saying old. But yes, I've been with Orange Bloods 22 plus years, so I've been with the Rivals Network a long time. But I'm doing well. I mean, like you said, chaotic. I do some team stuff. I do recruiting coverage for Orange Blood, so that's been really busy. I was in Jacksonville last week for the Rivals five-star event and Publishers Conference. Saw a couple of your coworkers there, but I'm doing good. Jesse, good to see you again.
Yeah, no, for sure. Good to see you. We did a short pod together a few months ago before OU Texas football last year, and I have to give you a little bit of a hard time
No,
because
I don't remember, but
we
uh-oh.
we previewed that game, and I think we were both leaning Texas's way, but I think you said that you just didn't see a way that Oklahoma could really win that game. So I think I would be doing OU Insider subscribers a disservice if I didn't give you a little bit of a hard time for that.
Wait, how do I get off this? No, yeah, I probably deserve a hard time for that and many other things. So probably justified. Yeah. So
No, that was God, that feels like a million years
yeah,
ago.
like honestly, like we'll be covering that game again before we know it. Yeah. So
Yeah, no kidding. And look, we're doing this because as of yesterday, OU and Texas are official members of the SEC. Obviously, something that we knew has been. I mean, we've known it's been coming for a very long time now. But it looked like. I mean, for one, it feels like both. It's been years, and also it happened in no time at all. And yesterday, look, I know OU went all out with festivities and activities the entire day, really the night before and all day. I know Texas had a similar celebration. So I was just curious from your perspective, what the day was actually like. You know, did you hear from anybody? Was there an anxiety? Was there an excitement? Maybe just from the Texas side of things. What's it like now that, Texas is an official member of the SEC?
yeah, I think there was a lot of excitement among the fan base. Like you said, they've been counting down towards that day, and I mean, fans. I mean, you've been seeing it on Twitter. This many days, and anytime there's a little change, there's an SEC logo put on the field or something, fans are like, oh my gosh, like those pictures go viral on social media. But it was a big event for Texas. Like you said, it was an all-day event, fireworks, speakers. They had the SEC commissioner there. They had Pitbull. They had a couple bands play, but Pitbull was the finale. And um, it was so crowded down there. There was talk. The rumor was the fire marshal might have to shut things down. There were so many people down there at that concert and just throughout the day. So, uh, big deal, big event, and yeah, the fan base is excited, man. And I mean, it's been fun in the Big 12, but I think as excited as the fan base is about going to the SEC, there was a big part of the Texas fan base that just wanted to flip a middle finger to the Big 12 on the way out the door as well. But yeah, man, it's going to be exciting moving forward. But the celebration to kick things off was certainly a big deal in Austin.
I wasn't able to super pay attention to everything because yesterday was so chaotic in Norman, but I'm assuming there were no shots from Chris Del Conte, like Joe Castiglione maybe taking a little bit of a dig at Lincoln Riley for coaches that didn't want to be in the SEC. They're no longer here. Any digs or any fun things like that in Austin the last couple of days?
I saw that on social media and it kind of just went over my head. I just thought he was talking generally speaking, but yeah, it makes perfect. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking Lincoln Riley, but no, nothing too chaotic. Del Conte. I mean, honestly, the big fireworks about here lately are Texas taking Texas A&M's baseball coach. They took an SEC coach from an in-state rival. There have been fireworks and people putting out fires there, but no, nothing too controversial, too crazy in terms of those types of comments.
Yeah, maybe I mean obviously the timing is completely coincidental, but does that add anything to the Texas A&M part of this? It seems like obviously OU and Texas, that rivalry goes back a long time. There'll be new rivalries formed in the SEC, but it seems that Texas A&M blood. I mean, it seems like it's still there. Does this just add to that even more?
Oh yeah. I tell you what, I had people who are not even don't live in the state of Texas, don't cover Texas or A&M. It's a guy, one guy on the Rivals Network covers Alabama and Georgia Tech. He said, when Texas plays baseball in College Station, he goes, I will fly in for that game and buy a ticket. So, I mean, there's some really bad blood there, especially on the A&M side. I mean, listen, they have one of the best seasons they've ever had, maybe their best season, one game away from winning the College World Series. And then the day after they get knocked out, boom, Texas swoops in. And it had been in the works, of course, but Texas swoops in and takes their coach. I mean, that's just a bad, bad look for A&M. And it was, I mean, Texas fans are puffing their chest up, hey, because Texas likes to refer to Texas A&M as little brother. Hey, we
Brother.
run the state, your little brother. Well, there's no more example of that than going in, taking their coach the day after he competes for a national championship and saying, "Hey, come on, pack your bags, get to Austin." And so, yeah, that was a big moment, and certainly on the I mean, there'll be bad blood between Texas and Texas A&M in all sports, but certainly on the baseball diamond the next time those two meet up.
Well, not to mention, I mean, I think Oklahoma fans are going to come to realize this too, but baseball in the SEC is not the same thing as baseball in the Big 12. I mean, baseball is, I mean, it's just a bigger deal, and I think it is interesting, something that's maybe not under discussed, but you mentioned Texas, referring to Texas A&M as little brother. OU does the same thing to Oklahoma State, but OU's now leaving the
Right.
Big 12, leaving that rivalry. Now Texas goes into the SEC to reignite that rivalry. I just, that's, it's funny to think about. But all of this being said, as fun as the last couple of days have been, as much of a celebration as it's been, that's only going to last so long, right? I mean, we've got SEC media days in a couple of weeks, fall camp starts in a few weeks. So I'm curious from a football perspective, how long do you think this excitement lasts, and how much does it all of a sudden turn towards, oh my gosh, now we've got an SEC schedule we've got to play.
Yeah, I'm not really expecting a lull in the excitement, honestly. I mean, you mentioned A&M's a new rival. Don't forget Arkansas. That's a
Yeah.
big historical rivalry for Texas. So and they get to stick with the Oklahoma one maintains. I mean, Oklahoma, like you said, loses one. I don't know. Like, is Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, do they still want to try to play each other in some capacity down the road, or is it one of these
In
breakups like Texas and Texas A&M? A&M were like, nope, we're not doing anything. So,
in other sports that I think there's been some discussion, but in football, I don't know, man. And I mean, that's a
that's tough.
shame.
That's yeah,
Yeah.
non-conference game. But I mean, Texas. You mentioned media days, fall camp. They go to Michigan in non-conference schedule. Then they've got to play this SEC slate. So, maybe after this first football season concludes, maybe there'll be a little bit of lull in the excitement, if you will, but it's still at a fever pitch, I think, here in Austin, and everybody's still really, really excited. I mean, this is a Texas team that was a whisper away from playing for a football national championship last year. People have those same kinds of expectations this year. If you look at Vegas odds makers, have Georgia and Texas, I think I've seen as the top two teams in terms of the odds of making the national championship. I still need to see this team a little bit. A lot of new faces. We'll see. I wouldn't go out and run and place a huge wager on that by any means, but odds makers usually are pretty close. So people are expecting this to be a very good Texas football team again. Sark's got it rolling in recruiting. So yeah, I think the excitement level is still at I don't say an all-time high, but it's still extremely high for Texas. I think it will be going into fall camp and certainly the non-conference slate. You got Michigan, and then you get right into conference play, and then that's where the fun really begins. So, no real downtime. I don't expect for Texas fans in terms of not being excited for the upcoming season.
Well, and look, you mentioned all of that. I mean, Texas obviously last year one of the best seasons in quite some time. And you mentioned, I mean, there's obviously new faces that becomes more and more common with the
Mhm.
transfer portal, all of that stuff. But it does seem like the expectations are really high. But you really can't. I don't think you can overstate just how big of a transition this is. It's not just playing tougher competition week in and week out, but these are largely unfamiliar opponents for both of these teams. I was asked something the other day from an OU perspective about what would constitute a successful season for OU with their first year in the SEC. I
Mhm.
kind of want to ask you the same thing because you mentioned, I mean, look, Texas is largely expected to come right in and maybe compete for an SEC title. You're coming off of your last year, you made the playoff, but with all the changes and everything, What do you think? What would constitute a successful season? And is there pressure? How much pressure is there in Austin to establish themselves right away as a real player in the SEC?
Yeah, boy, that's a good question because I don't know what to expect. I mean, this is a different ball game playing in the SEC. You don't have really any, I mean, maybe Vanderbilt, I guess, with all due respect to Vanderbilt, but you don't have those weeks or 2, 3 weeks where you can kind of relax and catch your breath and still stack wins, right? You've got to be prepared every single week for elite competition, tough road environments, or you're going to get bumped off. And as good as Texas was last year, Texas found itself in some pretty close games in the Big 12. So if you kind of play at that level in the SEC, those close wins will end up being losses. So, um, I think Texas is prepared. Obviously, they've got the big thing is the quarterback position. They're positioned there to be not just successful this year, but moving forward. If Arch Manning is what people think he'll be, they're recruiting at a high level. But for year one, what is an expectation or realistic? I think anything less than a college football playoff appearance in this expanded role, I think would be disappointing. Do they have to play in the SEC championship game? I don't even know how that's going to work, but not necessarily because I mean, obviously Georgia's going to be good. Alabama, there's some really Ole Miss, there's really good Texas A&M, Oklahoma. There's really good football teams you're going to be competing against. But I think if they make the college football playoffs, that would be a reasonable expectation. Maybe get out of that first round, even some people might argue. If they miss the college football playoffs, I think that would be considered probably a disappointing season just based on preseason hype, preseason expectations. Like I mentioned, Vegas odds makers and those types of things. So I think they've got to make another postseason run for it to be a successful first year in the SEC.
Well, and how unique of a situation is this for both teams? That I mean, I think Oklahoma and Texas kind of come into the SEC not under completely different circumstances. Last year, I think in large part was a mostly successful season for OU. Still disappointing to not, make the Big 12 title game and stuff, but I think there is excitement for OU and but at the same time it's different for a Texas team that just made the playoff that I mean is largely expected to maybe compete. It's also interesting too to think about not that there's any such thing as an easy schedule in the SEC. And you also mentioned Texas has to go to Michigan, but I'm just curious from your perspective, from the way the schedules worked out for both of these teams. I mean, Texas has got Georgia, but OU has got, one of the toughest schedules in the entire country. I mean, it's in the top five. All of this is a long-winded way of saying how much. I mean, both of these programs stand alone, but how much do you think, weirdly, with both these programs joining the conference at the same time, do you think they're going to be judged roughly evenly? Is there almost a way that eyes are going to be on both programs and how they do? I'm just curious, maybe are they almost kind of joined at the hip, at least for this first season, from that perspective?
Um, yeah, another good question. I think, if I'm being honest, I think Texas will be judged a little more harshly just because of what happened last year and because of what Texas has coming back. Oklahoma's obviously a talented program. They're recruiting well, but they're going through a bit of a quarterback transition there. Texas has a third-year returning starter who a lot of people think is going to be a Heisman finalist, not just a Heisman contender. People are already talking about Quinn Ewers as being a Heisman finalist. They've got a really good running back room. They've recruited the transfer portal very heavily and successfully at the receiver position to replace a few guys that now are going to be playing in the NFL. Their offensive line, for the most part, is coming back intact, including All-American Kelvin Banks. Defensively, they're loaded. There's a little bit of concern on the interior of that defensive line, but all that being said, I think people probably have a bit higher expectations in year one. I mean, you hear your people, and I don't think Texas should be saying this, but it's former Texas players are like, hey, we're going to come in and run the SEC. We're going to dominate the SEC. I'm like, whoa, whoa, just slow down. If you have those thoughts, keep them to yourself because you don't want to give these people, these opponents, any extra media, extra ammunition. Okay, you don't need to be doing that in the SEC. So, I think both teams will be competitive, but I think probably from like a national standpoint, I do think the expectation will be a little higher for Texas in year one, just because I think Sark's got his program maybe a little further along than Brent Venables does, like you mentioned. I mean, we keep saying it, but just then that's based on what Texas did last year, despite the OU game, obviously, but what they did as a whole last year, nearly beating Washington, making it to that Michigan game. They were one play away from that. And also the returning quarterback. I mean, I can't say it enough. Quinn Ewers coming back, I think, gives Texas extremely high expectations. And I think both teams will be expected to compete. I don't think anybody will be surprised if we see really either program maybe playing in a championship type game. But I do think probably people will have a little bit higher expectations for Texas just based off of last year and that quarterback position.
Just say it. Look, you don't expect Oklahoma to be able to compete. You think they're going to lose every game. It's okay. You can say
No,
it.
no, I'm not that guy. I mean, we got some of those dudes all over Orange Bloods, and I'm never going to be that guy. No.
No, well, just a couple more questions for you. You kind of touched on it there, but I think when you look at this Texas roster, and you mentioned some of the continuity, some of the new faces, if there's a position group where is there a position group on either side of the ball where you think, yeah, I mean, Texas is going to stand apart. They can compete with any team in the conference when it comes to the depth or talent of the position group? Or maybe, and is there a position group that you kind of touched on it there, maybe at the defensive line, where that could be an area of concern against some of these other SEC teams?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And you have to start at quarterback, right? I don't feel like you can be competitive in the SEC without good quarterback play. So Texas is positioned really well there with Quinn Ewers. But also, they always say, hey, especially in the SEC, to win, you've got to be competitive in the trenches. Well, Texas has a really, really good offensive line, a really experienced offensive line. So they're well suited there. They've got a stable of young running backs where it's a little bit alarming on offense, if you will. I mean, and I think they'll be fine, but they're breaking in a lot of new receivers. They went to the transfer portal and loaded up there. They've got some young, talented guys who haven't played much, including Ryan Wingo, who's a true freshman out of Missouri, who did really well in the spring. So they've got the talent there, Jesse, at receiver. But those guys haven't worked with Quinn Ewers a lot, right? Other than spring practices. I mean, in off-season stuff. So will they kind of have that connection in terms of timing and trust day one? I don't know. We'll see. But even if they don't, like I said, they've got a good offensive line. They've got a good running game they can lean on. Defensively, they're a little thin in that front seven. They went to the transfer portal again at defensive tackle and brought in several guys. They were after one of the guys that ended up committing to Oklahoma. So, they've got strength in numbers there. Now they feel like they have a rotation of guys they can plug and play there, but they lost two high NFL round draft picks, including a first rounder in Byron Murphy from the interior of their defensive line. You just don't replace those guys unless you're Georgia or Alabama. You just don't really replace those guys. So they don't have a ton of experience at linebacker. Anthony Hill was a freshman All-American last year. He's going to be fantastic, but they don't have a lot of depth and experience around him or behind him. So that front seven is going to be really interesting. That might be an Achilles heel for this Texas team and this Texas defense going into the SEC. I think they'll be fine at secondary, which is interesting because last year their secondary statistically was pretty bad, but they've done some things to shore that group up, got some really good young talent. So it's kind of a tale of two sides. On offense, I think they're going to be just fine in the trenches. On defense, I'm not sure how they're going to hold up in the trenches against these SEC offensive linemen. So that's a bit of a concern for me for this Texas program going to the SEC. Can they hold up this year? And are they recruiting well enough along the defensive line to maybe can just continually build on that? The answer right there to that question right now is I just don't know.
Well, last question for you, and I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I'm going to put you a little bit on the hot seat. I'm gonna have you call your shot, which is preseason predictions are pointless and all that stuff, but it's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Come on, it's
All
fun.
right.
All right, so true or I'm going to ask you two different questions. True or false? Texas finishes with more than 9 wins in the regular season. If you had to say right now.
I'm going to go with true. I mean, if I look at their schedule, the Michigan game's daunting at Michigan, but you talk about a complete overhaul of a roster and a coaching staff for the most part, right? So I mean, if you look at it on paper, and I've got the schedule in front of me off to the side here as I look, I mean, there are going to be a lot of close games on paper, but I would think Texas will be favored probably in every game except for Georgia, and they get Georgia in Austin. Now Texas A&M in College Station is going to be tough. Arkansas at Arkansas, you never know, rivalry game. Oklahoma is Oklahoma. Obviously, that's going to be a close game on paper, but on paper, including the Michigan game, right now Texas is favored in every game. So I'm going to go with more than 9 wins. But like you said, a lot can change. Hey, Quinn Ewers, knock on wood or not knock on wood, whatever, gets hurt, breaks a finger or something, has to miss a few weeks. That can change things. Different things can happen. But I think on paper, yeah, I'd probably go more than 9 wins.
I'd probably agree with you there. And then here's the real controversy right here. True or false? Oklahoma finishes with more than 9 wins in their first season in the SEC.
You know what?
This is the fun one.
I'm gonna pull up their schedule right now. Okay, so because I haven't looked at it.
Well,
So I'm just gonna go one by one, okay?
okay.
Temple, Houston, Tulane, win, win, win. Tennessee, oh, that's in Norman. You know what? I'll give them. Wait, is Tennessee's quarterback coming back? I should know that.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to give Tennessee that one. I'm a big quarterback experience means a lot to me. At Auburn, new stuff going on there. I'll give Oklahoma the win there. So Texas, I'll give Texas the win on paper there. South Carolina, I'll give Oklahoma. At Ole Miss, that Ole Miss team is going to be really good. So I'll take Ole Miss at home. Maine, that's a win. I tell you, at Missouri's a tricky one, man. That's a tricky game. I'll give Oklahoma the nod there, but that's a pretty good Missouri team with a good offense. Alabama, I don't know what to expect. They had so much roster turnover, but they do have Jalen Milroe coming back. I think Kalen DeBoer is a fantastic coach. Okay. How's he going to do in year one? That's tricky, man. That's in Norman. Oh, man. I'll give Oklahoma that one, but then I think they either lose. I think they're going to split Alabama and LSU being on the road. So I didn't even count that up in my head. But so I had what, 1, 2, 3, 4 losses. So I had them at what, 8-4? I don't remember.
8
What
and
was your
4.
number? Yeah. Was it 8? Is that what you had that?
Yeah.
I'm right
So
on your question, I guess. I'll go 8-4. Yeah.
okay, found the headline for this video. Jason Suchomel predicts OU.
With
I'm
one
just
of those
kidding.
losses being the Texas game.
I was about to say
doesn't learn after last year.
That's why we're gonna make sure to clip this, just like last year. We're gonna clip this. We'll revisit. No, honestly, this comes back to and I do think I think OU. I mean, just faces a tougher schedule this year than Texas. Not that Texas doesn't have a tougher schedule.
Those last 3 games for Oklahoma,
Yeah.
at Missouri, Alabama, at LSU. Oh, that's tough.
It's well, and I've told people, and I'm not going to get a lot of love from OU fans. I'm not going to say OU can't compete for an SEC title right now. I'm not going to say that. I just think that the variety of outcomes I think for OU is massive, given a lot of turnover, a new quarterback, this hard schedule, this incredibly difficult schedule. I think you could tell me they win 10 games, and I honestly think you could tell me they win 7. And I really don't think either of those. Where Texas, you do have the Michigan non-conference, you do have Georgia, but it feels like maybe there's a little bit more consistency. Maybe there's a little bit more of a steady path there. But I'm gonna put it all on you. You're the one that's saying OU is not gonna be able to compete.
Cut that last part where you spoke out. Absolutely. So
that's right.
Well, I'll take the heat if I'm wrong. No problems there. So.
Well, hey man, I know it's a busy couple of days. I know you've got more to do here. I've got more to do here, but appreciate you again for stopping by. OU Texas, we're in the SEC after 3 years, both programs finally in the SEC, and we're just a little under 2 months away from college football starting back up in Austin and Norman. So appreciate everybody for listening, for watching. Make sure to go follow Jason Suchomel on X, formerly Twitter. Make sure to go to orangebloods.com, get all of the latest up-to-date information. No one covers the University of Texas better than orangebloods.com. Jason, thank you again for stopping by. We'll see you guys next time.